Hello, everyone. I'm Becca, dietitian by trade, mom 24/7, wife from the start, and when there's a few extra hours in the day, you might find me hitting the trails or on horseback.
And I'm Kara, a therapist to women, a mom to a boy, an entrepreneur, mountain junkie, and a postpartum runner.
And this is Fit for a Queen, a podcast that's devoted to the female athlete wanting to balance the teeter-totter of all the things we desire out of life as women: performance, health, intellect, and taking time for self, even if we only get 1 minute out of the day.
We're so excited to be bringing you the queens in the athletic world who have done just that. Okay, ladies, take a seat at your thrones, grab your crowns, and welcome to Fit for a Queen. Welcome back, queens. We are with Emily Williams Carver today. Let me tell you a little bit about Emily. Always playing sports as a kid, this former athlete turned author has experienced a range of challenges that girls face throughout their sports journey. Emily Williams, in writing her debut novel, Lady-thletes, discusses how to face problems head-on with tips and tricks for players to try to overcome their own challenges. As a coach, she's been able to have this as a dialogue with her players, but excited to be able to broaden this reach with her book. So welcome to the podcast, Emily.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here today.
Yeah, we are too. So first of all, tell us a little bit more about your background. We want to get to know you a little bit more. How it came about, your love of sports, and how you came about now writing the book and being an author.
So my love of sports really came from the fact that my parents were always putting us in sports. Mm-hmm. So to us, it seems like just one of those things, a part of our household. It was a part of our life growing up between me and my brother. We always were playing sports. But then probably around age 11 or 12, I honed in on basketball. That's all I wanted to do. That was the sport that really just, I loved the team. I loved kind of the plays. I understood it as a whole at a very young age. It was a sport that just clicked with me. So that's what really ignited my passion in basketball.
Yeah, Becca here is... Her daughter is a basketball fiend. Becca coaches. Becca was a basketball player, too. So, yeah, you're speaking my language here. I set the bench in basketball. I love
you
setting
can
the
run
bench.
fast.
I ran fast. That's it. But so basketball was it, huh?
Yes, and it's not to anyone else's effort. My mom was like, you should try swimming because I loved swimming. But to me, it was something that I loved to do, and I didn't want to do it competitively because then it would change it from being something I loved to being a chore, where basketball never felt like a chore, regardless of what competitive level I was playing. Then, unfortunately, my junior year, that super fun year when all the girls' hips settle, when my hips settled, I tried running one day, a long distance, and I pulled my patellas off track. Ooh. And that knee injury took me down for the rest of that fall season, went to my junior varsity season, and I couldn't keep up speed-wise. I couldn't keep up with my team, and I felt super discouraged. I rode the bench all year. And after that, I just felt that it was time to hang up my basketball hat, and I did do track my senior year because all my friends did track. I was the only one basketball player out of my social friend group. Mm-hmm. So I did track senior year. And after all, that emotions of coming off an injury, I took off time in college of sports, competitive sports completely. And then probably right after that, I hopped right into coaching. I felt something was missing. And I think giving myself this time away from my sport made me realize I would miss it. It's one of those things, distance makes the heart grow fonder. That's what happened with me in basketball.
Right.
And within 6 months of graduating, I started coaching. And then COVID happened. And all of a sudden, I can't coach anymore. My thing that brings me passion is gone. And so I pivoted all my energy into writing. And it was really a very simple thing because it went from all the lessons I would teach at practice, I'm just putting them on pen and paper. So it really did challenge me, which is great. But it also was a whole new way to kind of express the lessons I teach in practice just to a broader crowd.
Yeah, and I think when a lot of people transition sport, they don't actually transition. So sometimes I think that's helpful to have that time to be okay, I'm ready to exit as a player, but I love the sport. How can I continue in a different role and now become a coach? So I think that's almost a healthier way of experiencing that transition. So Can you share with us a bit of some of the issues that you think female athletes are tackling in this age of sport? It is kind of funny now. I was just joking with Kara that like my daughter, she's almost my height and she's 11, and so like we're going to go on our third shopping spree because she's like, now my shoes don't fit. I'm like, what? And then her toe poking out. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. But I mean, that's just, physically they have their challenges, but also sport is so much different than when I grew up. So I'm kind of curious what you're seeing.
So I see a few things. So I did it. I grew up with it. I specialized. I picked basketball, and that's what I did. So you're having this weird age of specialization where kids are more prone to injuries because they're not working out their bodies in different ways. And that's what kind of happened to me was my outer quads were really strong, but then my inner quads were super weak from being in that basketball defensive stance all the time and not finding other ways to work my muscles out. So you're seeing that specialization phenomenon impacting them physically, but also mentally. Because imagine all you're doing is one thing all the time. You could hit burnout really fast. And it puts you kind of in this mental space of, I have to be perfect at this because I literally spend all my hours outside of my regular school, homework, everything else doing this. And if there's any failure, that's a lot of pressure rather than, oh, okay, if I don't play basketball well this season, I have softball next season and I can do well at that. You don't have anything to look forward to but the same thing. So I'm seeing that burnout phenomenon really happening with some of my players. And I think also the impact of social media. I grew up with social media, but it wasn't as strong in kids as it is today. So you're also dealing with some aspects of, it's like this exclusion on social media where, for example, I know all my players follow each other except for one girl. And like, I have to be very conscientious to make sure she's included because they were all friends before joining the team. So they have their inside jokes on social media that they bring up in practice. And I have to kind of maneuver that as a coach and be like, guys, that's cool, but that's not what we're talking about right now. So that everyone feels included and safe in our space. So those are the big things I see going on.
I wouldn't have any idea how to tackle social media from a coaching perspective and just dealing with that piece of it.
Right.
With a
well,
group of girls.
And you bring up a great point. I think you have your team culture and friends that are within there. How do you bring them together when they all come from different groups? And that's one of the transitions we did this year is my daughter joined a team where she didn't know anybody. And it was actually a really good learning experience because she was forced to kind of learn how to make friends. And that, one of the girls was actually one of her rivals that she played against in Parks and Rec. So it was kind of funny. Now it's her teammate. So lots of learning lessons.
I love when that happens.
Yeah.
Such a good
I had that happen
right?
to me too. And we actually wound up being great friends. And so when we play each other in our rival games, it was awesome. Because I'm like, hey, Sarah, I'm sorry. I'm boxing you out right now. Don't mind me.
I'm going to get that ball. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's, again, like sports is so different than when I grew up of like, yeah, you're playing with kids that you don't even go to school with. But it's so, especially if you're going to be playing outside of high school, I mean, you're going to be playing with other
strangers
players,
anyways,
right?
yeah.
Or rivals that are now on your team. So what a great learning experience to start younger.
Yeah, and I think that's super helpful to be able to meet new people, regardless.
Yeah, well, tell us all about the book. What are we going to find in there? Tell me all the things.
All the things. It's essentially broken up into 5 different sections that tackle different problems that I find still to be universal to female athletes today. So there are things that I literally lived through that now as a coach, I'm now watching happen in front of my eyes. And I believe my responsibility, and I feel like all our responsibility, is to make life better for the next generation. So it's not as hard. It's not, because there's always going to be challenges, but to help make just the little things easier, especially being a coach. And I'm not there to make their life hard, make them live through the grit I lived through. So the first section is all about loss and how to deal with loss, whether it's not making the team, which is the example I walk through, to what if you lose a game, to bigger losses in our lives that kind of transcend our lifetime. So that's kind of the first section, really getting in touch with your emotions and really like, if you're frustrated, how do you deal with being frustrated in a moment you might not be able to be frustrated in, and kind of working through those different ways with better like training your brain. The second section is all about compartmentalization, so time management. It's a lesson I learned through a private basketball lesson with one of my coaches, and he essentially just taught me this word, and it changed my life when it comes to how I manage my day-to-day and how I bucket my time and how I focus 100% on the task at hand rather than getting distracted by all the other things going on. Because life gets busy and complicated, but it's really hard when I'm staring at my 100-list-long to-do list and I have to get it all done by the end of the day. Instead of looking at the whole list, I look at it in sections and kind of walking through that. The third piece I talk about identity, and actually I do talk about my identity crisis I had in college. I had this whole identity crisis of, I'm not Emily with a jersey on anymore. I don't have a basketball in my dorm room. Like, who am I without that? And really learning who I was in that moment. My thought to put it in this book was, let's teach players at a younger age to have an identity outside of sports, so that when the sport isn't there anymore, they don't feel as lost as I did during that time.
And I think that helps too. So we interviewed somebody today, and they were talking about how like one of the disparities in women coverage for sporting events is that they don't tend to tell a lot of stories. And I think, that's part of how we can probably teach identity is like, well, there's got to be more to your story. Like, tell us about you as a person, a friend, So that's great that you're starting that at a younger age, and now, these younger generations can read your book. So,
and what an important position a coach can be to encourage that, even at practices or let's talk about something other than sports. And again, you know how athletes look up to coaches, right? Like, I'll listen to coach, I won't listen to mom, sort of thing. So what a great opportunity you have to share your story along with encouraging the storytelling of women in sports.
Because that's the whole thing, right? I mean, actually, in my next section, chapter 4, it's about relationships in sports, and I talk about romantic relationships, and I literally quote, I ignored my mother about this, so I'm telling you that she was right, and this is my giant apology letter to her.
But she appreciates that.
I told you so.
She did. Yep. I was like, yep, Mom, you're welcome. Here's my apology letter. And then my fifth section is about leadership, because as I've said 100 times, I'll say 100 more, athletes are different. They want to step into leadership roles. They don't want to just sit on the bench. They don't want to sit on the sideline. They want to be in the game in every aspect, not just as the player. They want to lead the team. And so how do you build that leadership resume as an athlete amongst athletes? So that's the whole book right there.
Love it. And on that theme of athletes and leadership, how can, especially for us female athletes, how can we get out there and elevate women's sports? Because we know you're a big advocate. You're writing a book. You're being vocal about it. How can we use these leadership skills and change the persona that we're having of women's sports?
Oh, man, all the feels, because of what's going on with the NCAA right now.
Yeah, we've been chatting about that today, right?
Yes, and I have lots of feelings about it, because I think that's the epitome of why women are not as far along in sports as we want to be. It's because we don't speak up about it. It's because we don't say anything. Because I bet probably 5 years ago, if that would have happened in this state of the world, it'd be like, okay, yeah, we're the girls. We just get yoga mats and a rack of dumbbells, and that's it. Where it took everyone on the internet to be upset about it.
Right. Social media has positives. Yeah, I mean, the positive aspect, using our voice for that.
Yes, exactly. So I think it's that. I think it's changing how our own values, right? In our brains, how do we value ourselves? Those girls knew we deserve as much as the boys do. So why is this like this? Why is the NCAA essentially telling us we don't deserve that? Because though the girls' sports might not be as televised and we're going to say money and stuff, I think the NCAA should be neutral on that, because it is literally supported by groups that are under Title IX, which is a whole other legal shenanigans we could get into for hours. But I think being vocal about it and calling it out, but then also just like your little things in your day. The WNBA has, and I don't have regular TV, but the WNBA has like an app where you can stream all the games. Spending the $6 a month so I can have every game to watch, that's one way you can make a difference by putting your money kind of where your mouth is and showing financial support if you can. is what elevates it, because I hear the argument of capitalism. I hear it, and I'm like, okay, well then I'll just vote with my dollar where I want it to be. So I'm going to say we should support women's sports. I also have to show that I am supporting it in all the facets that I personally can.
Absolutely. So, Emily, I have a very tough question before Carrie gives you the last one. Who are you rooting for to win the women's tournament?
Oh man, all of them.
What? Oh,
look at that politically correct.
You gotta have a favorite.
Unfortunately, man, my heart's with UConn personally, because I've always watched them.
Yeah.
But no, I love just watching the game. It's so bad. I just love watching the game and like cheering everyone on and seeing the plays. It gets really bad because I coach AAU, and I'll be like watching the boys scrimmage before us, because the boys are on before we come on for our practice. And I'm yelling at the boys' teams, like, on both sides of the scrimmage. And they're like, who is this person? Thank God the coach knows me, because him and I run a clinic together. And he's just like, oh, just ignore her. She's just... So I just love watching the game. And something about women's sports that's way different than men's sports, and I'm going to call it out. Women have better fundamentals than men.
Uh-huh. Oh, men will agree to that.
Hands down.
Oh, I agree, yeah.
They should.
Yeah.
They should.
They should. Because I just love watching actually like a good game, with good skills, both sides. Because, cool, you can do a trick shot, but can you make a layup? No? Okay, then
Exactly.
you can talk to me later.
Chucking things up.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I got it. My daughter loves Paige Becker, and I mean, she is so solid, and I like how she has a composure of just letting the game come to her. I mean, she can start out with no points in the first quarter and still end up in 20 points by the end of the game. So
Who are you rooting for?
Oh,
she's part of UConn.
Yeah.
So yeah.
UConn?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is Maddie going
Yeah,
for UConn?
because that's her favorite player.
Sure. Again, like that's what the stories we need. We need to like favorite players. And again, that goes, we can go down the rabbit hole of like, media and money and then sexualizing the athlete. I have to wear a bikini to get money. If I am an athlete to get attention.
Naked on Sports
it's just,
Illustrated with a basketball in front
Emily,
of
it
you.
feels so big.
It is big. And
Chip away at these
what
things.
bothers me, it's also big, because then the other part is because they're amateur athletes, they do not have rights to their own image.
Right.
So how are women supposed to get attention if there's no money, but they want to get the right attention on them, but they can't do it because they don't have the rights to their own image because they're in college? That's so many feelings. I have
Right.
lots of feelings about lots of things, and that's the one that gets me worked up.
I know it's kind of crazy. I don't, yeah.
You're welcome to have your feels. It's okay.
Oh, yeah, it's a good place for it here. Well, Emily, again, I think we could talk about all these things and more in depth. What a good time to chat with you when the NCAA is going on and some stuff coming up that I'm sure is giving you all the feels. So we're really excited for your book. I'm also sharing the link that you are giving us to the listeners that they can read a sample of the book. So we're going to put that in our show notes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And yes, if they like it, the book is available on Amazon. I believe it gets everywhere in the U.S. within a couple of days, and it does go to other countries too. So wherever your listeners are, they can grab it.
Great, we do. We have listeners all over, so
Yeah.
that's great. And then, Emily, at the end of each interview, we like to ask our interviewees how they live out the FIT philosophy. So how do you try to balance performance, health, intellect, and taking time for yourself in this kind of crazy, crazy year?
So this is where, as I said, that compartmentalization, making sure I'm organized and intentional about what I do so that I can fit everything I want to fit in 24 hours.
Intentional. I like that.
Yeah.
That was actually my New Year's
Very.
resolution last year, to be more intentional of my time. And that went well until February of 2020.
It's all right. You get a pandemic clause. It's okay.
I said I wanted a staycation
Cool.
last year.
You got it.
My husband's
Ask
like,
what
your
you-
staycation went well last year. A whole year. Well, Emily, keep doing the work that you're doing. I bet your athletes are really grateful to have a coach like you. So thanks again for being on and being a listener.
No problem. Thank you both so much, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Bye,
Talk to you
Emily.
later. Bye,
Bye,
Queens.
Today's episode is brought to you by yours truly. I'm excited to announce the releasing of my book, Finding Your Sweet Spot in Sport, Avoiding Relative Energy Deficit in Sport, also known as Red S, by optimizing your energy balance. Be sure to follow me on social media or go to my website, www.beccamccombel.com. Bye, Queens.
For additional information on today's topic and guests, follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Fit for a Queen. And
Hashtag Fit for a Queen.
don't forget to rate us on iTunes. We can't wait for you to join us next time on Fit for a Queen.
Bye, Queens.